Money is rarely about money. We like to believe it is logical, mathematical, rational. We imagine wealth as numbers on a screen, spreadsheets, strategies, investments, returns. But if money were purely logical, everyone with access to the same information would build wealth the same way. They don't, because money is emotional. It is psychological. It is deeply tied to identity. And until we understand that, we will keep chasing income while sabotaging wealth. Today, I want to explore the psychology of money, not from a technical perspective, but from a human one. Why we fear it, why we chase it, why we lose it, why some people feel calm with very little, while others feel anxious with millions. And most importantly, how to build a relationship with money that feels stable, grounded, and aligned. Let's begin with something simple. Money amplifies who you already are. It doesn't transform you. It reveals you. If you are anxious without money, you will likely be anxious with money, just about different things. If you are impulsive without money, you will be impulsive with larger numbers. If you lack discipline, income will not save you. This is the first psychological truth. Money magnifies patterns. That's why sudden wealth often disappears. Lottery winners go bankrupt. Athletes lose fortunes. Entrepreneurs scale businesses and then collapse under lifestyle inflation. It isn't because they lack intelligence. It's because their internal structure wasn't built to hold what they received. Wealth is not built by income alone. It is sustained by behaviour, and behaviour is rooted in belief. So let's talk about belief. Most people carry invisible scripts about money. Scripts inherited from childhood, culture, family dynamics, and personal experiences. Money is scarce. Rich people are greedy. Money causes problems. If I have more, someone else has less. I don't deserve wealth. These scripts operate quietly. You don't consciously repeat them every day. But they influence decisions. They shape risk tolerance. They create guilt around earning. They trigger anxiety around saving or investing. You cannot outperform your internal beliefs for long. Eventually, behavior returns to identity. This is why the psychology of money matters more than financial tactics. Two people can earn the same salary. One builds assets calmly over time. The other increases spending with every raise. The difference is not knowledge. It is mindset and emotional regulation. And that brings us to the second truth. Money is tied to safety. At its core, money represents survival, shelter, food, security, belonging, status, control, even love in some subconscious way. When your nervous system feels unsafe, your financial decisions change. Some people hoard money because it makes them feel protected. Others overspend because spending gives temporary relief. Some avoid looking at bank accounts entirely because numbers trigger shame. Financial behavior is often emotional regulation in disguise. Think about that. Spending can be a way to soothe anxiety. Investing recklessly can be a way to chase validation. Avoiding budgeting can be a way to avoid confronting fear. If you want to change your financial life, you must first stabilize your internal state. A regulated nervous system makes better long-term decisions. Calm people compound wealth more effectively than stressed people. This is not motivational. It's neurological. When you operate from urgency, you choose short-term relief. When you operate from calm, you choose long-term growth. Nature teaches this well. Nothing in nature rushes growth. Trees do not panic about height. Rivers do not force direction. Growth happens through steady conditions, not emotional spikes. The same is true for money. Wealth compounds quietly. It is built through consistency, not adrenaline. Now let's talk about comparison. Comparison is one of the most destructive forces in financial psychology. Social media has amplified this dramatically. We see curated lifestyles, luxury aesthetics, quick success stories, and overnight entrepreneurs. We compare our chapter 3 to someone else's chapter 20. This distorts perception. When perception is distorted, behaviour follows. You overspend to keep up. You take risks that don't align with your values. You feel behind when you're actually progressing. Wealth is personal, but comparison makes it competitive, and competition often leads to insecurity-driven decisions. Here's a quiet truth. The goal of money is not to impress others. It is to create freedom. Freedom of time, freedom of choice, freedom from constant financial stress. But when money becomes a performance, it loses its function. You don't need to look wealthy. You need to be stable. That's psychology. Now, let's explore something deeper. There is a difference between being rich and being wealthy. Rich is income. Wealthy is control. You can earn a high salary and still feel trapped because your lifestyle depends on that income continuing. You can earn modestly and feel grounded because your expenses are low and your assets are growing. Wealth is about margin. Psychologically, margin creates peace. When you have financial margin, you think clearly. You negotiate better. You leave toxic environments faster. You say no without panic. When you have no margin, every decision feels urgent, and urgency erodes rational thinking. So if you want to change your financial trajectory, don't just focus on earning more. Focus on creating space. Space in spending, space in expectations, space in lifestyle. Space reduces psychological pressure. Pressure leads to poor decisions. Now let's discuss risk. Many people misunderstand risk tolerance. They believe risk tolerance is about personality, being bold or conservative. But often, risk tolerance is about experience. Someone who lived through financial instability may avoid investing entirely. Someone who grew up watching stable growth may take calculated risks comfortably. Your history shapes your financial courage, and that's important to acknowledge. You cannot shame yourself into smarter decisions. You must understand your emotional baseline. The psychology of money requires self-awareness. Why do I feel anxious investing? Why do I overspend when stressed? Why do I avoid looking at my accounts? Awareness removes shame, and shame is one of the biggest blockers of wealth-building behavior. Shame makes people hide. Wealth requires visibility. You must be willing to look at numbers without flinching. Now here is something rarely discussed. Money is also tied to identity expansion. When you begin earning more than your family ever did, it can feel destabilizing. You may unconsciously downplay success to maintain belonging. You may sabotage growth because it distances you from your roots. Humans value belonging more than wealth. If success threatens belonging, the mind may resist it. That is why growth requires psychological maturity. You must learn to expand without losing yourself. And this brings us to one of the most important ideas in the psychology of money. Enough. If you don't define enough, you will never feel secure. There will always be someone earning more. Always a bigger house. Always a new benchmark. But undefined ambition creates chronic dissatisfaction. Wealth without contentment is psychological poverty. Defining enough creates clarity. It allows you to pursue growth without desperation. It allows you to enjoy what you build. It transforms money from obsession into tool. Now, let's talk about long-term thinking. The most powerful financial principle is compounding. But compounding requires patience, and patience requires emotional stability. Many people understand compounding intellectually. Few apply it emotionally. They panic in downturns. they chase trends, they abandon strategies. Consistency is psychologically difficult because it is boring. But boredom is often where wealth grows. There is no adrenaline in steady investing, no applause in disciplined saving, no excitement in delayed gratification. But over time, these quiet behaviors create extraordinary stability. Psychology determines whether you stay the course. So, how do we improve our relationship with money? First, observe your patterns without judgment. Notice emotional triggers. Notice spending habits. Notice avoidance behaviors. Second, stabilize your nervous system. Sleep well. Reduce unnecessary stress. Build routines. Financial clarity improves when mental clarity improves. Third, shift from consumption identity to ownership identity. Consumers chase upgrades. Owners build assets. Consumers seek validation. Owners seek sustainability. Fourth, define your values. If freedom matters, structure your finances around flexibility. If impact matters, invest in growth that aligns with contribution. Money is neutral. It amplifies your values. Finally, understand that wealth is not built in dramatic moments. It is built in ordinary days, in saying no to unnecessary upgrades, in investing when it feels uneventful, in reviewing accounts calmly, in making decisions aligned with long-term identity. The psychology of money is ultimately the psychology of self-trust. When you trust yourself to handle resources wisely, anxiety decreases. When you align spending with values, guilt decreases. When you build margin, fear decreases. And when fear decreases, clarity increases. Money stops being emotional chaos. It becomes structure. It becomes support. It becomes freedom. And that is the quiet goal. Not luxury, not applause, not comparison, but freedom. Freedom from urgency. Freedom from panic. Freedom to choose your direction. Money will never solve every problem. But a healthy relationship with money removes unnecessary suffering. It creates space. And in that space, you can build a life that flourishes. Wealth, then, is not just financial. It is psychological stability expressed materially. And that begins not with income, but with identity. If this resonated, reflect on one question. Are your financial decisions driven by fear or by alignment? That answer will shape everything. And remember, calm compounds. So does discipline. So does clarity. Build those and money will follow.